Hi guys, welcome back to another video, and today I'm going to give you 10 tips to help you improve your portrait photography. So don't get me wrong, I am not a portrait photographer in any way. I'm not the expert, but over the course of my 8 to 9 years in photography, I've gradually gone from absolutely hating portraits and never taking photos of people to gradually transitioning to the point where I am now, where I like taking photos of people and portraits as much as I do any other type of photography. So yeah, I'm not the expert on it, but I just want to share a few tips that help me progress my portrait photography and get to the point where I am now. So we're going to start off with tip number 1, and that's going to be to know your model. So knowing your model is really useful when you're taking portrait photos, because you can go out and you can just mess around and joke and have fun with the person that you're taking photos of, or even a group of people. That's even better, because knowing your model, then you have a lot more fun. There's not as much pressure. If you're doing a paid photo shoot or a photo gig, something like that, then there's a lot of pressure on you and the model themselves to get amazing photos. But if you're just going out, hanging out with friends, somebody that you know, and you're just taking a few photos here and there, that is a lot less pressure on you, and the person that you're taking photos of is just having a fun time and you're just capturing the moments. So that's why I like to know the model. So tip number 2 is to make your model feel comfortable. In portraits, you want the photos to look natural. You don't want anything to look posed, even though you are posing models, but you want it to look, normal and natural, and having your model feel comfortable is the key to that. You don't want them super tense or kind of nervous or something like that, because then the photos aren't going to turn out as well. They might have the wrong facial expressions or something like that. So ways to make them feel comfortable is to mess around, joke, like I said in the first tip. And one of my main things is that I always have a little speaker with me, like a little portable Bluetooth speaker. And then either I play music or I give it to the model and they can play whatever music they want. And then it'll fill the awkward silences in between taking photos or when you're posing them or something like that. And it'll just make the mood much lighter and calm everybody down and get rid of the nervousness, because you're just at that point hanging out with a friend and listening to some music, and you just happen to be taking some photos at the same time. So another tip with inside tip number 2, making somebody feel comfortable, is if you're going on a photo shoot with somebody who's never done a photo shoot before, or somebody who's not the most confident in themselves. So for people like that, it's probably a little bit harder, or in your mind you think it's a little bit harder to make them feel comfortable with the photo shoot. But what you can do is, if you trust in your photography skills, you can take a few photos in the beginning and kind of gradually work up to the main part of the photo shoot. But in the beginning, get a good few photos, get some good angles and everything like that, and then flip the camera around and show your model the photos of themselves. And then they'll see that, I don't know, some people will say that it's your photography eye, but it's usually the model just being a great model, that they can look really good in photos. So you can flip the camera around, show them the photos, hype them up a little bit, and then they're like, oh damn, I'm looking good in photos, I'm a model now. And then they'll get really comfortable and be super natural in the rest of their photos, and they'll be excited and more energized to get those photos after the photo shoot. So moving on to tip number 3, and that would be to find the best light. So another key to portraits is the best lighting. For me, lighting is always the best at sunrise or sunset. This rule is totally meant to be broken, because you can get great photos any time of day. It just happens on, the situation. But if you're just starting off, then I would suggest to either take photos at sunrise or sunset, because at those 2 times a day, you have the beautiful, warm, natural lighting from the sunset or sunrise that's lighting up your model, and there's no harsh shadows, there's no harsh highlights. You don't have to do a lot of editing with the lighting. So that's one of my main tips. But again, this isn't a strict rule, and it's 100% meant to be broken. If you see an opportunity for a great photo, even if it's 12 o'clock, noon, midday, whatever time it is, you can get a great photo. It happens to be on the situation, the environment, all that stuff. if you're in deep woods and there's no sun shining through, then you have all shade. That might look really cool. Or if you're in the woods again and there's, you know, the sun's lighting up the woods behind you and then it's like kind of dark around the model, that's good emphasis on the model. So you don't have to take photos during the best light of the day, but it just helps when you're starting off. And once you get better at portrait photography, then you can transition to different types of day and get more creative and find those different shots. So tip number 4 would be to have your model wear something, their outfit, that fits the scene. So this is one of the things that for me, because I'm a visual person, it can either make or break a shoot. I know I've said that about 1 or 2 of the tips already, but this one's very important for my style because I tend to take photos with more of a wide angle. So I tend to get more of the model's outfit in the photos rather than close up just like headshots or something like that. So for me, the clothing is very important. You want the clothes to match the vibe and the style of the location that you're taking photos at. So for example, when I went to Iceland, I had my girlfriend Jen with me and she was modeling in a lot of my photos. And doing the research for Iceland, I knew that there was going to be a lot of dark clouds, some rain, and we were going to a lot of really cool churches and kind of old moody style. So I helped her pick out different outfits that I thought would be really cool and match the spooky type vibe of the places that we were going. So you don't want to be, you know, going to the middle of the woods for a photo shoot and have the model wearing a bikini or, you know, a guy in their swim trunks or something if they're out in the woods. That just doesn't make sense and doesn't fit. So why would you be taking photos like that? So that's tip number 4. So tip number 5 is to pay attention to your camera settings. So for me, whenever I'm shooting portraits, I usually keep it at a very low aperture. So the lowest aperture that your lens can go is perfect for portraits because it gives you the perfect depth of field. You get the blurry background and the blurry foreground, and then your model is in perfect focus in the middle. So that's the main thing, but at the same time, you don't want to have too high of an ISO because you don't want the model's skin to be the grainy high ISO look. And then shutter speed, you don't want anything to be blurry. But the main thing is aperture, and you want your model's eyes to be in focus because the eyes are the main focus of anybody. Whenever you're talking to somebody, you're looking them in the eyes, that sort of thing. So even if they're really close to you and their nose is a little bit out of focus, but you get the eyes in focus, that's going to be good because then you'll have the background and the foreground out of focus and the person is the main subject of the image. So tip number 6 is to create depth. So going off of tip number 5 with the low aperture, creating depth is one thing that I do in almost all of my portraits, I would say. Basically, creating depth for me is having something in the foreground close to the lens and then having something in the background behind the subject. So that gives you, you know, the feeling of depth, and it just creates more contrast and more interest around the model. So for me, I always like to have either grass or like tree branches or something of that nature in the foreground, and maybe have it in a style where it kind of puts an emphasis on the model more, maybe in like a circular fashion around their face, or like if there's grass, then have it like that, something like that, that puts more emphasis on the model and it gives you that feeling of depth. And I think that creates a really good look in portraits and definitely adds something to just a plain, you know, headshot of somebody. So tip number 7 is poses. So I know that sounds super obvious, but this is something that I'm still working on and it's probably the biggest flaw in my portrait photography, and that would be posing. I have a hard time posing people because contrary to having a YouTube channel and talking to the camera, which is actually relatively difficult, I'm kind of quiet and reserved and not that loud of a person, so it's kind of hard for me to tell somebody what to do and pose them in the exact way that I'm visualizing in my head for a photo. So for this, basically you just have to practice. The more you practice, the better you are at knowing the easiest poses or knowing the best poses that you like in your photos, and that'll gradually get you more and more worked into posing a model. So for me, some silly tips related to posing. If you really don't know what pose you want your model or models to do, one of my main go-to things is to just tell them to play with their hair. Whenever somebody goes like this, or, you know, flips their hair back or something like that, for me personally, I think it looks really good. So it adds some drama. It looks relatively natural because you know, you're moving your hair out of your face, that sort of thing. So that's just one of my go-to things. If I don't really have anything in mind, I'll just be like, yeah, just walk around, play with your hair, lean on different things, and I'll just get a bunch of different photos, and then while I'm editing, I'll pick out the best ones, and out of the 100 that I take, I'll bound to have 1 or 2 that I like. So tip number 8 is to shoot a bunch of different angles. So you want to get close, you want to get wide, you want to find different foregrounds, move to the left, move to the right, zoom in, zoom out. For me, this is one of the tips that I need to start following more. I find that when I'm out traveling or on a photo adventure or something, I'll be taking one shot and focus on one photo, and then I'll come away from that being relatively satisfied and be like, oh, I got that one photo that I wanted. But you don't really know if that's the true photo that you wanted until you get back home, you put your photos on your computer. You never know which angle is going to be the best, so you just want to cover all the angles before you leave, and then once you get back, then you'll have all the different options to choose in your library, and then you might have, instead of one really good photo, you might have 5 or 6 really good photos from different angles. So that was tip number 8, and now we're on tip number 9. So tip number 9 is to watch your model's hands. So for me, hands are kind of on the peripherals of your mind when you're taking portrait photos. You're taking photos of people, it's like their head, everything like that. But hands can make or break a photo, because if you're posing a model and you pose them correctly and everything, but their hand is just dangling super awkward or something like that, then the photo might not look as natural or as good. So you want to pay attention to the hands in the images, because you might be taking a photo and come back from it later and say, damn, I wish I had her hand, you know, in her pocket or hanging on something or playing with her hair or something like that, because the hand doesn't look natural in the pose that it's at. So 2 other things regarding hands in portrait photography. One would be to always have the hand facing this way towards the lens. So you want the front of your hand in the photo. You don't want the back, because this, you know, this is the part that you're using all the time. This is the less nice looking part of your hand. You want the super soft backside, the top of your hand in the photos. So if you have somebody playing with their hair or something, have them, you know, have it in the front, or if it's up by their face, have this side of the hand showing in the image rather than the inside. So then the other thing regarding hands is when you're going on photo shoots with your girl friends, you are probably gonna be taking photos of them, and they are going to have either a little hair tie on their wrist or a scrunchie or something like that on their hands, and you are going to hate that in your images. So you have to remember to either take that off their wrist and put it in your pocket or hold it for them or something, or have them take it off and put it in their pocket, because you don't want to have like a black band around somebody's wrist or a big scrunchie taking up unnecessary space in an image that you don't want, and you don't want to be photoshopping out a scrunchie or a hairband in every single photo. You want it to be a nice clean wrist. Okay, we're taking that.
Wait, what do you mean?
This. Because you don't want this on your wrist, because this looks terrible in photos.
Oh.
And if they have some jewelry or bracelets like this, that's fine, because that adds to the image. But if it doesn't add to the image and it's just a hair tie that's distracting, you want them to take that off and put it away. So I just wrapped up a portrait shoot here. I was gonna film some B-roll, but it was kind of rushed, so I only got some photos. But I just wanted to talk to you guys a little bit about tip number 10. And tip number 10 is gonna be the most cliche out of all the tips, but basically it's just to practice. Practice, practice, practice. In the beginning, I was barely taking any photos of people, and I just wasn't that good at it. But the more photo shoots I went on, the more photos I got, the better I became. So that's tip number 10, is just to practice, because the more photo shoots you go on, the better. Like I said, I just finished one here with my friends, Carly and Jess. I'll put some photos on the screen right now, but yeah, we went out into the woods. Again, you don't have to live in a very specific area with a lot of really cool places nearby. I live here in New Jersey. It's not like anything exciting, but 30 minutes away from my house is like a nice patch of woods, and it's just one of those really cool places. So you can always find a cool spot to go take some photos, and you know, just get some of your friends, like I said, go out, take some awesome photos, and practice. So that's gonna be it for the tips. Now back to me in my studio, aka my room. So thanks for watching, guys. Hopefully those tips helped you out in your portrait photography. If there is a tip that you specifically thought was helpful, comment down below. Let me know what you think. If you have any more feedback, or if you want to see any more of my portraits, then you can go follow me on Instagram. The link will be down in the description. And definitely click the like button on this video, because those always help out trying to grow the channel as much as I can. So if you like, then subscribe, and there's going to be a lot more videos coming out, some more tutorials, some more travel tips, some more photography tips, and a lot more travel photography vlogs. And definitely subscribe, because we got big plans for the channel in the future. But until next time, I'll talk to you guys in the next video. Peace.